Hey friends, it's Somer, and in this video I'm going to be covering the brand new Ravnica Clue Edition that just got fully previewed today. Ravnica Clue Edition is a new way of playing Magic. Specifically, it's a 4-player Magic the Gathering game with design elements coming from the Clue board game. Each game box comes with everything you need to play the game, so the contents are 8 Ravnica Clue Edition boosters, each containing Jumpstart style half decks. So each of these boosters are themed around one of the guilds. You take 2 of these boosters randomly, you shuffle them together, and that's your deck to play with. And then it also comes with 21 evidence cards featuring characters, weapons, and rooms inspired by Clue. And then there's also 4 hidden info screens to hide your information as you're writing stuff down, 1 evidence notepad, 1 case file envelope where you're going to put where the character, weapon, and room end up being, and then 1 card storage box, so once you open up the boosters you can easily put them back in the box. And the boosters are a selection of 8 out of 20 possible half decks, so if you want all of them you're gonna have to buy more boxes, I guess. So to play the game, it's basically just 4-player Magic, but it has a Clue twist to it. At the beginning of the game, you draw from the 21 evidence cards and randomly select a killer, a murder weapon, and scene of the crime, and conceal them in the case file envelope. And then the rest of the evidence cards are evenly distributed amongst the players. Then you play a regular game of Magic with your decks. However, whenever you're dealing damage to an opponent, you can guess one of the cards that they have. And each time you guess, your opponent is obligated to secretly tell you whether or not you're right or wrong. And then to win the game, you either just take out all your opponents, or you correctly guess the 3 pieces of evidence: the weapon, the killer, and the crime scene. Now that legitimately sounds fun to me, and I can't wait to actually try it in person, but what's even more exciting is that us Commander players just got 51 brand new cards from the set to possibly add to our Commander decks. And every single game box also comes with a box topper, which is a full art foil Shockland, which is super sweet. So in this video, we're going to be checking out all 51 of the brand new cards and see if any of them are any good in Commander. But before we begin, a quick reminder that you can purchase all these brand new cards over at our sponsor, cardkingdom.com/mtggoldfish. Alright, we begin with the suspects from Clue, and we start things off with Apothecary White. This is a new 4-mana white 3/4 legendary creature human cleric. It has vigilance, and whenever you attack, create a food token for each player being attacked, and you can pay 1 white, tap her, and tap X untapped foods you control to create X 1/1 white human creature tokens. Wow, this card is actually like legitimately good. It generates food quite efficiently. You can have 1 food generated each time you're attacking for each opponent. So if you have 3 opponents, you can generate up to 3 food tokens if you're attacking all 3 of them. And then you can easily transfer all those foods you're making into just a giant army of creatures who then can also attack and make even more food. So this is all about like food and also tokens mattering and just really good value overall. Now, I don't see Apothecary White as being an excellent commander, but I see her being incredibly powerful in the 99 of basically any style of food deck. So Samwise Gamgee is all about generating food tokens, and Apothecary White can turn those into a lot of creatures. That's amazing. Also, it is a historic creature, so you can get it from the graveyard with Samwise Gamgee as well too. Or if you go Sam and Frodo, for example, you could just generate a lot of food and then turn all those foods into creatures with Apothecary White and do that every single turn. So I think White's just very, very good. If you're in a food deck, you probably want to look very closely at Apothecary White, because I think this is just a slam dunk in the 99 of a bunch of decks. Then we move on to Senator Peacock. This is a mono blue legendary creature, human advisor. It's 5 mana for a 3/4, and it says artifacts you control are clues in addition to their other types, and have pay 2, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card, and whenever you sacrifice a clue, target creature can't be blocked this turn. So all your artifacts are now clues, so extra clue synergies if you're in a clue deck. And then whenever you're sacrificing clues, your creatures become unblockable. So that's nice little built-in evasion. Where I see this card to be kind of useful is perhaps Lonus. It is a creature, so it will trigger Lonus. You'll make a clue out of it. And then when you're sacrificing clues, either to Lonus or your Krark-Clan Ironworks or whatever, then you can get unblockable creatures that can swing in there. That's kind of okay. And then other decks like Jenny Flint and Madame Vastra, they also care about clues, sacrificing clues for value, so that could be pretty good too. I'm not as high on Senator or Peacock as Apothecary White. This is more mana, and the payoff is just a little bit more sketchy in my opinion, but it is pretty decent in the 99 regardless. Moving on, we have Mastermind Plum. This is a 3-mana black legendary creature human wizard. It's a 2/2, and it says whenever it attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. If an artifact was exiled this way, create a treasure token. And whenever you cast a spell, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Alright, so this is a crazy good draw engine in a treasure deck. That's fantastic. And if you give it evasion or something, it's just a 2/2, but if it gets to attack very profitably, then it's repeatable exile removal, which is nice, but also more importantly, it also can generate treasures by itself too. So giving Mastermind Plum evasion is just a really great idea, but again, I think this card is going to be fantastic in the 99 of decks rather than being the commander. I see this card being very, very good in any black deck that focuses heavily on treasures, because then if you're making a lot of treasures and using them to cast spells, you're just going to be drawing a bunch of cards in the process very efficiently. So Barakos, Party Leader, Prosper, Tomebound, Agnus, the Dragon's Lash, these are all going to be fantastic places, homes for the Mastermind Plum. This is just a really, really good card. Moving on, we have Headliner Scarlet. This is a red 4-mana 3/3 legendary creature human warlock. It has haste, and when it enters the battlefield, creatures target player controls can't block this turn. So straight up, this can't block. You can swing for lethal if you want. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library face down. You may look at it and play that card this turn. So impulse draw, and also that a very powerful ETB that allows you to just swing in for lethal on an opponent, even because of haste, so it even contributes 3 damage by herself as well too. Again, I don't really see her as a commander, but I see her as a very powerful inclusion in the 99 of a bunch of decks. Faldorn is going to love being able to cast stuff from exile, generating more wolves in the process. Agnus, this is a creature with haste, so it will generate treasures when you're attacking, and similarly, Samut loves hasty creatures too, and being able to just remove potential blockers is invaluable while generating incremental card advantage is just really good in general. Then we have Emissary Green. This is a 5-mana green 3/3 legendary creature human advisor, and when it attacks starting with you, each player votes for profit or security. You create a number of treasure tokens equal to twice the number of profit votes, and then put a number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control equal to the number of security votes. So most likely when you're playing this in Commander, at least, your opponents don't want to be giving you treasures. You're probably going to be voting for treasures, and you'll get 2 treasures each time you're attacking, and then your opponents, assuming you don't have like a lethal board state or anything, they're just going to give you +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. That's still pretty good. That means each time you're attacking, you're going to be generating 2 treasures, and your opponents are going to be giving you 3 +1/+1 counters. That's like on the bad end. On the good end, if you have like a lethal army, they're just going to have to give you treasures, and that's pretty awesome too. I think that's actually quite reasonable for a 5-drop in green. It doesn't have haste, and you really want to give it haste to immediately start getting its attack trigger, or else that 5 mana is kind of awkward if it just dies and does nothing. But again, I think this card is actually pretty decent in a couple decks. The most interesting one to me though is a Restorer of the Council. I really want to have like a fair vote deck. I really don't want to play like Tivit or whatever vote, because that doesn't really feel like a vote deck. It just feels like a Tivit deck. But like, I really want a Restorer of the Council to work. I want to make a vote deck that's fairish, and Emissary Green is just going to be fantastic there. Like, if they vote in the way that you want them to vote, they get a little bit of a treasure, and you get to get extra value out of that too. And I don't know, that's super fun to me. I want to make an Arrestor deck. Emissary Green, really good there. And then the final new suspect is Commander Mustard. This is a Boros one, so it's the first non-multicolored one. It's a 5-mana Boros 5/5 legendary creature human soldier. It has vigilance, and other soldiers you control have vigilance, trample, and haste. And then you can pay 4 mana, 2 red/white. Until end of turn, soldiers you control gain whenever this creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to defending player. And I believe the way this is worded, if you somehow generate infinite mana, including red and white, you could activate this ability like a billion times and then attack with like a single soldier, and then you can deal infinite damage to defending players. That would be pretty sweet. Correct me if I'm wrong, honestly. Again, I'm not really sure of this as the commander because it is a 5-drop, but it is kind of cool in the 99 of a soldier deck. So I'm thinking like Caesar, Legion's Emperor, Aragorn the Uniter, Jarina Kudro, anything that's like a Boros soldier leader, honestly, can work with Commander Mustard. Kind of awkward that all these creatures are 1/1s. The token generators are all 1/1s, so you don't get that much value out of the Vigilance Trample aspect of it, but if you have pump effects and stuff, then those keywords get a lot better too. The next evidence cards are the killer weapons, and there are 5 in total. Each one is a 1 mana equipment, and there's 1 for each color. So we got Wrench, equipped creature gets +1/+1, and has vigilance and 3 tap it, tap target creature. And they're also all clues, by the way, so they're all clue equipments. So each one is 1 mana, equipped to, you can pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card like a clue, and then you can also equip creature and it gets like a minor buff. So the white one, +1/+1 and has vigilance, and you can pay 3 mana, tap it, tap a creature. Candlestick is the blue one, equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever this creature attacks, surveil 2. Lead Pipe is the black one, equipped creature gets +2/+0. The Knife is the red one, as long as it's your turn, equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has first strike. And the green one is equipped creature gets +1/+2, has reach, and can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. Honestly, I think all of them are kind of bad. The one that is most interesting to me is the Candlestick. If you're playing a Surveil deck, then you really need to grab any Surveil cards possible. So this is one of the few enablers for it, and it's a repeatable one. The other ones, I feel like there's just better options for all of these effects for at least equipments. But the Candlestick's kind of interesting to me, and who doesn't want to beat somebody up with a Candlestick? That's kind of cool. And then the last pieces of evidence is a new cycle of lands. There's 1 for each guild, so 10 in total. All of them are lands that enter the battlefield tapped. They tap for 2 colors, and then you can pay 4 mana, tap it, and investigate. I think all of them are kind of bad. Like if you are in an extreme budget and you have a tap land that taps for 2 colors and does nothing else, then these are actually kind of a little bit of an upgrade, because if you are super desperate and you have a lot of mana and nothing to do with it, then you can pay what is essentially 5 mana to investigate, and then you can pay 2 additional mana to sacrifice a clue and draw a card, and that's something, I guess. But overall, these are not really useful in Commander, in my opinion. In addition to the 21 brand new cards that are used as evidence in the game, we also have new cards that are showing up in the Jumpstart style Clue Edition boosters that you're going to find in the set. 3 new cards per guild. So we're going to start with Golgari, and we have the first card is Tribune of Rot. This is a 3 mana, 3/3 Elf Shaman. Whenever it attacks, mill 2 cards. For each creature milled this way, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. I don't think this card is very good. It is a repeatable mill engine, and it creates sapling, so if you're in a mill deck that cares about sapling, maybe the Myco Tyrant, it might make the cut, but I don't think it's just good enough, honestly. The next card, though, is more exciting to me. This is Sludge Titan. This is a 6 mana, 6/6 Golgari creature, zombie giant. It has trample, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 5 cards. You may put a creature card and or a land card from among them into your hand. So as long as you're milling a land and a creature, you're getting 2 cards each time it enters the battlefield or attacks, which is actually a very good rate. So if you're in a deck that cares about milling and is very creature heavy, Sludge Titan can do some serious work in terms of incremental card advantage. The deck I'm most excited to try Sludge Titan out is Sidisi Brood Tyrant, which is an old school deck that cares about milling and also a lot about creatures. So your deck is basically all creatures and just milling yourself to generate a bunch of zombies. Sludge Titan works very well with both those 2 things. It's going to generate card advantage and generate zombies with Sidisi out. The final new Golgari card is Amzu Swarm's Hunger. This is a 5 mana, 3/3 legendary creature insect shaman. It has Flying Menace. Other insects you control have menace, and whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, you may create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token, then put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the greatest mana value among those cards. Do this only once each turn. So this one is all about doing graveyard shenanigans. Either you're reanimating stuff, or you're delving, or you're just returning stuff, scavenging. Anything that is removing stuff from the graveyard is going to be really, really good with Amzu, and is going to generate a bunch of insects, and then it's an insect lord. It buffs your insects. I think this card is going to be super fun with cards like Tortured Existence, where for 1 mana, you get to just generate a insect creature token every single turn and get a bunch of +1/+1 counters out of it. It's also going to be a slam dunk, I believe, in the 99 of insect decks, or even being an insect commander itself. So like Grist the Hungertide and Zask Skittering Swarmlord. You're going to have one of them as your commanders, the other one's going to be in the 99. You're going to be self-milling and making a bunch of insects. It's a really fun time. Then we move on to Rakdos, and Rakdos is all about goading and attacking. The first card is Incriminating Impetus. It's a 3 mana Rakdos enchantment aura. Enchant creature, when it enters the battlefield, suspect enchanted creature. It has menace and can't block, and enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and is goaded. In terms of the impetuses, I feel like this is one of the weakest ones. The other ones have beneficial triggers when they're attacking, and this one is not that great. The next card is much more interesting to me, but I feel like this is more of a cube card than like a commander card. Carnage Interpreter. This is a 3 mana 3/3 Devil Detective, which is super fun, and I love the art, by the way. Nice little hat on it. When it enters the battlefield, discard your hand, then investigate 4 times, which is a lot of investigating, to be fair. And then as long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, it gets +2/+2 and has menace. So it discards your hand for you. It lets you investigate 4 times, and then it starts smashing as a 5/5 with menace. That's actually just like insane in cube and stuff, but like in multiplayer, you just don't want to be empty-handed that often. So it's really like a large, a painful thing for you. I don't know where you want to put it in Commander, but it is a really exciting card nonetheless. And then the final card is Frenzied Gorespawn. It's a 5 mana 4/4 horror, and it says when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, goad target creature that player controls, and whenever 1 or more creatures attack one of your opponents, those creatures gain menace until end of turn. Now this one is actually, I think, the most playable of the Rakdos cards in Commander. It scales up in multiplayer, it goads a bunch of creatures, and then it also kind of encourages them to attack each other, and then also the goaded ones have to attack each other, so the menace is just a nice little upside there. I personally would try it out in either Karazakar or Cardor Doomscourge, like a Rakdos goad style deck. I think it's good enough to try out in the 99 there. Then we move on to Selesnya, and Selesnya in this one is all about just like big beefy creatures and lots of them and attacking with them. The first one is Sumala Rumblers. It's a 4 mana worm, and its power is equal to the number of creatures you control. It has 4 toughness, and it has Myriad, so when it attacks, you make a token copy of it attacking each other creature. So even by itself, if you have 3 opponents, you're going to be attacking with Sumala Rumblers. You're going to make 2 copies of it attacking the other opponents, and they're just 3/4s attacking each opponent, which is really nice. And then Conclave Evangelist is another Myriad creature, 5 mana 4/4 Myriad. It's an elephant cleric, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you create a token that's a copy of Conclave Evangelist. So if you have like evasion or trample or whatever on the Evangelist, you get in there for damage, you make a bunch of copies of the Evangelist, and you attack even more, and then combat math is going to be insane because you're going to have a crazy amount of Evangelists. Like this one is actually much more exciting in my opinion. Both of these cards are actually very exciting. Gyrid, the Evangelist, is much more so because of the shenanigans of just having a stupid number of tokens on the battlefield at some point. It's going to be really exciting. But nonetheless, the idea of Gyrid is that you attack with a Myriad creature and you stack the triggers that the Myriad trigger resolves first, so you get a token, and then Gyrid's attack trigger allows you to populate the Myriad token. You don't have to sacrifice it or exile it at the end of combat, the copied one at least. and that's super fun. The final new card with the Selesnya boosters is Vernal Sovereign. It's a 6-mana Selesnya 4/4 elemental elk, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a green and white elemental creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. So this is just your Titan effect for the Selesnya Go Wide decks. It makes a huge token and it just benefits you for going wide. So again, Gyrid Conclave Exile absolutely loves Vernal Sovereign, but also like just more traditional Go Wide Selesnya decks like Imara, Soul of the Accord is gonna love this too. Yeah, a lot of your creatures are gonna be small, but then you have this huge token generator with Vernal Sovereign, which is super fun too. Then we move on to the Gruul cards, and honestly, I just lumped them all together because they're not very exciting to me in Commander. Furious Spine Splitter just is a big dude that grows kind of slowly, which is not very exciting. Stampede Surfer makes green boar tokens. They're kind of small though, but boars are fun. And then Herald of Ilharg is a boar beast that gets kind of big, which is also kind of fun, and deals damage to your opponents as you're casting spells. All of them I think are kind of weak in Commander, honestly, but I kind of like the Stampede Surfer and Herald if you want to make like a board deck. That sounds like JK fun to me, and those two cards go into that. That's kind of fun. Next are the new Boros cards, and I think at least one of them is quite decent in Commander, maybe, possibly. So we'll go over each one of them. First is Ordrun Mentor. This is a 3-mana Boros 3/2 creature Minotaur Soldier. It has Mentor, and whenever you attack a player, target creature that's attacking that player gains first strike until end of turn. Fine in this multiplayer format, but I don't think very good in Commander. Then we get to Boros Strike Captain, which is another 3-mana 3/3 Minotaur Soldier, and has Battalion. Whenever it and at least 2 other creatures attack, exile the top card of your library. During any turn you attacked with 3 or more creatures, you may play that card. So incremental card draw on an attack trigger. That's really interesting. And then the last card is Aegis of the Legion. It's a new equipment. It's a 2-mana equipment that says equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has Mentor. And whenever equipped creature mentors a creature, put a shield counter on that creature and has equipped 3. This is an interesting effect. I just think it's a little bit expensive to equip and just doesn't pump the equipped creature enough to make me super excited about it. However, the Boros Strike Captain I do find quite interesting in Commander, and I think it will find a home in Commander Liar Portier, which is going to make the exiled card cost less to cast, which is really nice. And also Ishin to Heavens is 1, because it is an attack trigger, so you get to have double the card advantage out of your Boros Strike Captain, which I think is quite relevant. Then we move on to the Dimir cards. We have Undercover Butler, a 3-mana 2/3 creature human rogue. When it attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, it can't be blocked this turn. Not really exciting in Commander. Memory Vampire is a 6-mana 4/4 Vampire Detective with flying. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, any number of target players each mill that many cards. Then you may collect evidence 9. When you do, you may cast target non-land card from defending player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. I feel like this card would have been very interesting if the collect evidence wasn't 9. Maybe if it was like 3 or something, then I'd be super stoked for it, but 9? That's a lot. And then just milling a little bit on each opponent maybe, or yourself maybe, is just not that exciting for a 6-drop at least. But the final card I'm actually kind of excited for. This is Dimir Strain Catcher. It's a 4-mana 3/3 fairy rogue with flying, and whenever you attack, surveil X, where X is the number of opponents being attacked. And at the beginning of each end step, if 3 or more cards were put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield this turn, draw a card. So if you're attacking 3 opponents, you get to surveil 3, and if you put all those cards into your graveyard, you get to draw a card with Dimir Strain Catcher. So it's pretty easy to set up, but I find it to be more interesting because of its creature types. So I see it as a fairy, so it has potential in Alila Conning Conqueror or any fairy deck, and it's also a rogue, so it has potential in rogue decks like Enowan the Ruined Thief. I don't think it's going to be an all-star in either of these decks, but I think it's a worthy enough inclusion in either of them. Moving on to Simic, we have 3 new Simic cards. The first one is Scuttling Sentinel. It's a 3 mana 3/2 Crab Elf. I love it. It has Flash and Vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. Until end of turn, that creature becomes a blue crab in addition to its other types and gains hexproof. I love the flavor of this card. I love Simic stuff. I love putting random creature types all together in a smorgasbord. It's great. I think this card is just kind of a little bit on the weaker side for Commander though. Moving on, we have Unruly Crassus. It's another 3 mana 4/4. This time it's a Shark Octopus Lizard. I love it. It has Trample, and when it attacks, you may have the base power and toughness of another target creature you control become XX until end of turn, where X is Unruly Crassus' power, and it has Adapt 3. You could pay 4 mana to Adapt 3, put 3 additional counters on it, make it a 7/7 for 5 mana essentially. This card seems great in this game of Clue, but in Commander, I just feel like it's too much mana for what it's trying to do. But the card that I'm actually quite interested in trying out at least is Lonus Genetics Expert. This is a new 3 mana 1/2 legendary creature Snake Elf Detective. It has Evolve, and whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on Lonus, investigate that many times. So as you're evolving Lonus, it itself can very much just investigate very efficiently. And then whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. I think Lonus is going to be very good in Lonus, perhaps. The new Lonus will trigger old Lonus. You get to investigate when it enters the battlefield, and then as you're sacrificing clues, you get to put counters on your other creatures and grow them. And then as you're playing bigger creatures with Lonus, then new Lonus also gets bigger and investigates more. I think it's worth trying out in the 99 at the very least. Moving on to Izzet, we have Ecstatic Electromancer. This is a 3 mana 2/3 Goblin Wizard with prowess, and whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. I don't think this is very good in Commander. However, I'm very excited for the middle card, which is Resonance Technician. This is a 5 mana 4/4 Weird Detective. I love weirds, and Weird Detectives even better. It has flying, and whenever it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, investigate twice. Love it. And then you can tap in and tap X untapped artifacts you control. Copy target instant or sorcery spell you control with mana value X. You may choose new targets for the copy. Now this is going to be very exciting in any Spellslinger deck that has a big artifact sub-theme, including one of my paper decks. So I'm actually going to be putting it in a paper deck. But before we talk about that, let's look at the last card, Corporal Projection. For 2 mana, it's a sorcery that says target creature you control gains Myriad until end of turn, or you can overload it for way too much mana, 7 mana, and just give all your creatures Myriad and hopefully swing in for lethal and attack and win the game. This is a great way to put a lot more damage onto the battlefield, but also get a lot of sweet into the battlefield triggers as well. So those two things can be very exciting, but I'm mostly excited for the Resonance Technician. I have a Myra the Magnificent deck. It's a Spellslinger deck that generates a ton of artifacts. So being able to just cast instants and sorceries, generating a bunch of attractions, which are artifact permanents on the battlefield, and then having Resonance Technician allow me to copy those spells by just tapping the attractions is really, really exciting to me. If you hate attractions though, and you hate fun, I guess, and you hate theme parks, then you can go with Galzif Prismari, which does a similar thing. It's Spellslinger, but artifacts. You want to generate a bunch of artifact tokens as efficiently as possible, and then tap them to cast your instants of sorceries. So either way, Resonance Technician has a home in both those two decks. Then we move on to Dimir. We have Portal Manipulator. This is a 4 mana 3/2 human wizard with flash. When it enters the battlefield during the Declare Attacker step, choose target player and any number of target attacking creatures their opponents control. Those creatures are now attacking that player. I love this. This is very cute. If people are attacking you, then nope, they're not. They're attacking somebody else. So this can prevent a lot of damage and also just redirect a lot of damage. Or if, let's say, there are some small creatures that you want to die, well, you can redirect them into bigger blockers potentially, and then the defending player will just maybe block them and they will die. So it's very cutesy. I think more powerful than most people will give it credit for. And I think it's actually kind of good in like any sort of like blink deck, or even like a, not Asperia. There's a god, Ifara, god of the Polis, like a flash style deck as well too. That could be super fun. Another card that's actually surprisingly playable is Ravnica Foil to Conspiracy. It's a new 3-mana 2/3 legendary creature human detective. It has vigilance, and whenever you cast your second spell each turn, investigate, and you can tap her to add 2 colorless mana, activate only during an opponent's turn. So if you're making a bunch of clues or whatever, you can tap her to very efficiently just crack your clues at the very least, but there might be more exciting ways of using her tap ability, and if you have ways of just casting a lot of spells every single turn, you can investigate a bunch. So I think she's not like broken or anything, but she is very exciting. And then the card I care about the most though, that I really like, is Suppressor's Skyguard. For 4 mana, you get a 2/4 human knight with flying, and whenever a player attacks you, if that player has another opponent who isn't being attacked, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you this combat. So basically for 4 mana, you got a 2/4 flyer that says if your opponents could attack you, they have to attack everybody before even thinking about attacking you. So that means like if they just have like a creature and they want to just swing it at you, no, they're not. They can't. Well, they have to kill the Skyguard first, I guess, or they have to attack everybody first before dealing damage to you. So this is a very nice pillow fort card attached to a 2/4 evasion creature. I like this card. This is very good. It's not going to prevent your opponents from just crater hoofing the entire table, but it's going to stop a lot of like poke damage coming your way. And it's very exciting against Voltron decks if they don't have any other creatures. Then we move on to Orzhov, and we have first Afterlife Insurance. It's a 2-mana instant. Creatures you control gain Afterlife 1 until end of turn, draw a card. And I think this one is kind of like board wipe insurance. If somebody's about to wipe the board for 2 mana, you get a bunch of tokens and draw a card. That's okay. But it's also more exciting, in my opinion, in a sacrifice deck. You can pay 2 mana and then sacrifice your board and then have a bunch of more creatures being generated and then sacrifice those creatures as well too. Works really great with like blood artist effects and stuff like that. So this is a really interesting card. Another card is Syndicate Heavy. It's a 4 mana 4/4 giant rogue with extort, and then at the beginning of your end step, if you gain 4 more life this turn, investigate. That's okay to me, not very exciting. And then we have a new board wipe, Covetous Elegy. This is a 6 mana Orzhov sorcery. Each player chooses up to 2 creatures they control, then sacrifices the rest. Then you create tapped treasure tokens for each creature your opponents control. I don't really like this one because your opponents get to choose what creatures they get to keep, and you make a certain amount of treasure tokens, but I'd much rather play a board wipe that costs less mana, that lets me select the creatures that I want to die. So I don't really like the Covetous Elegy. Of the 3, I think Afterlife Insurance is the most exciting for a commander deck. Finally, we have the Shockland reprints. These are box toppers. You get 1 random one for each game box that you buy of the Clue edition, and they're full art, brand new artworks, and they're all sweet looking Shocklands. What can you say? The exciting thing about them, though, they have a little bit of a sinister twist in the artwork. All of them are either depicting a murder or depicting someone about to be murdered, like in the case of Hallowed Fountain. So they're sinister. So if you want your Shocklands to have a sinister twist in their artwork, then these are going to be fantastic. And they all are foils as well too. So if you're like your shinies, that's a nice little bonus as well. And that's it for the Ravnica Clue edition. A bunch of brand new cards. Most of them I wouldn't say are very exciting in Commander, but I think like the new evidence, the killer suspects, are surprisingly quite good. And the other ones have some very niche abilities for specific commanders. So let me know which one are your favorite new cards, and also let me know if you're interested in the Ravnica Clue game. This is something that I'm genuinely genuinely excited to at least try out once, maybe do content about it. So let me know in the comment section if you're actually interested in trying it out. Are you going to be buying the game box? Do you want to see a video of the gameplay in action? Let me know in the comment section below. Like and subscribe because I'm going to be covering the pre-cons as they're coming out on Wednesday. So come back on Wednesday/Thursday to see pre-con previews. And until then, friends, see ya.